welcome to ACMP Turkey's Booster Series. ACMP Turkey is an organization that started about a year ago, and here we are, a group of people enthusiastic about change, who are doing change management professionally, and we have these monthly talks with attendees from international expertise who share their change management practices, or how change management applies to sometimes even their personal lives. So it's very both entertaining and also informing sessions. So thank you for being here. And our guest today is Kristen Schickinger. She has worked in a professional corporate for over 20 years. She is now conducting studies in a more maybe freelance manner, but she's also a lecturer at the university, and she is into, now you'll hear more about it today, change management. And so thank you, Kristen, for joining us. And I'm really looking forward to our conversation and the things that you'll share today. And I would like to start with maybe giving some background information about you, some more of it, because I know that since we worked together for a while, you made a big change in your personal life after 20 years. I'm sure there were many changes during those 20 years, but still I think the big change is when you're shifting maybe your area of focus, your occupation. And how did it go? Would you act any differently now if you were going through that phase a couple of years ago? And what are the learnings? What are the teachings? If you don't mind, if it's not too personal, then we can discuss more about the practice.
Yeah, sure. We can talk about that. Sure. So yes, of course, it was a big change, a huge change. And would I do things differently with the information that I have now? Probably yes, because I have learned over time. And yes, if I knew what I know now at that time, yes, I would probably have acted differently. But at the time, I took the best decision that I could based on the information I had and based on the understanding of the world that I had. So, do I regret anything? No. Because if I could have made a different decision, I would have. Am I happy with my life? Yes. Are there things that are completely different now than they used to be? Yes. The one thing I can say that when I look back, I had journals. I did journaling, and when I look back at what I've written there, almost every single day, I was writing about, I would want to have more time. I would need more time for my husband. I would need more time for myself, for my horses, for whatever. And now this is completely, I have all the time I need. I can freely set it up as I want. If you ask me to come present, I come because I can schedule around it. So yeah, things have changed dramatically, and so long answer to a short question.
Very nice. I was just going to make the comment that change for the better it's just so rewarding, and we can make change for the better. It's on to us to make it for the better. So please go ahead, share with us the knowledge, the information on the common barriers to change, and then we can talk more about our personal experiences along the way.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, so I have prepared a presentation because I have been told this is a more formal environment, so I come prepared. And what I have done is I have I have taken bits and pieces from my own experience, from things that I have learned in my job in corporate, from what I am learning now that I am working with coaches, with clients from all different industries and also different management levels, and also I'm, as you said, Gusta, I'm teaching. I'm a lecturer at a business school, and one of my courses is change management. So there is a bit of theoretical background included in here as well. And a lot of it also is included from another set of training that I have gone through, and that is NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, which is a coaching methodology, but has a lot to do with communicating. And so quite a bit of that is included in the slides as well. So I have prepared a few slides. You're all professionals, so you will probably not hear an hour-long new stuff, but you will probably hear maybe one idea, maybe two ideas. So look for the one thing that is new to you. Look for the one thing that you might want to apply in your life going forward. So that's all I can ask for. I hope it will be entertaining for you. I hope you will find this one idea at least. And so with that, I wanted to also introduce myself a bit more. Well, I think we already said it. I am now working as a freelancer, as a coach, as a trainer, also as a counselor, because with all my expertise, I am always also making my best and doing my best to help others not make the same mistakes as I did, and really find a great way around their professional life. So 25 plus years in corporate, now I am working on my own and really enjoying that. The little graphics behind me and on the picture, we'll talk more about that at the end of the session. It's something called neurographics, and I've already talked about it for about an hour for ACMP. So of course I cannot talk about change without talking about neurographica. So sure. Let's see. And chime in, Vesta, you know I love to talk, so you have to interrupt me. Okay, so first thing I wanted to draw your attention to is these two pictures. Now, as it says here, there were 66 years between these two events. So only 66 years between the first flight and mankind landing on the moon. So this is how fast change happens, and how fast change happens these days. And so when you think back, like, I don't know, in Germany, so I'm from Germany, and I'm in Germany actually. When I look back like 300 years ago, 400 years ago, when I look at drawings from little villages here, regardless of whether it's 200 years or 300 years or 400 years ago, the villages look exactly the same. The environment has not changed that much. So someone who had died there, if they would have resurrected 100 years later, they would probably have a good way of finding their way around, because things were the same. Maybe their grandson would run the same business they did. And so this is what humankind has been over millions and thousands of years probably. And so suddenly things have changed. Things have changed thanks to technology. And if you think back now, I mean, this pandemic situation has really also accelerated the changes, the development. So if you look at us now, today, and if you think back 2 years, things have completely changed. I mean, who would have thought that someone in Germany would run with a mask the entire time? We could never have imagined that. We're all sitting now in front of a computer and talking to a little kind of spot on the screen rather than talking to each other in the room. I mean, I have been used to that because I have been working in that environment for quite a long time, because I always was remote. But for other people, this is completely new. This is completely foreign. So what I was going there is that we're talking so much about change these days, And I think it's, yes, because people want to change, because we all have this desire to improve our lives. But at the other hand, we have no way out. We have to change because things are changing around us. So we have to adapt to it. So this is why change and change management is important to all of us, because it's just, even if it's not our choice, it will happen to us. Now, what are the mistakes? What are the mistakes that I have been seeing over time? And again, this is from my own experience in corporate. This is from my conversations now that I have with my coachees. And this is also, of course, from the interaction I have with my students, because my students, they also talk a lot about their changes and what they have to go through. And they are international students coming to Germany. So there is a lot of change happening for them as well. So what are those mistakes? And those of you with a change management professional background, of course, you know Peter Kotter's 8-step approach to change. And so there are these 8 steps where it all starts with, I call it here the pre-change, where people start thinking about the change that needs to happen. And now I have looked at what can happen in this stage. What is the danger? What are the mistakes that we can make at this stage? And then there is this transformation stage, phase where change happens, where we, for example, have to introduce and fit. If there is a merger and acquisition, we have to make sure that the two systems start working together. And then there is this additional later stage with the new normal, where, well, okay, now is this the way it will always be, or is this the new start to an additional to a new change? So let's look at these different steps there. And of course, yeah, go ahead.
Before you proceed, may I suggest that for our audience, that they can pose questions maybe at the end of each section, maybe like after you discuss the pre-change complacency vision metrics for success. And please feel free to send in questions, dear audience, and we can maybe make it a more interactive session, or we can continue on, and at the end of the complete session we can discuss. But please feel free to send in your questions, and we can look at them with Kristen.
And they're lucky because you will read them.
Kristen.
Yeah, thank you. You will read the question. Otherwise, as I said, if I'm talking, I'm talking. Okay, so let's see in the pre-change phase. First of all, the first mistake that we can all make is complacency, because things are just okay as they are. So why should we change? And the example really is probably the one example that I will give you is, and I'm critically looking at my own country here, is Germany. I think things have been almost too good for too long for Germany. So there was no need to really innovate here. I mean, if you would have seen what happened at the beginning of this pandemic, it was havoc, because there are companies that did not have a great way of communicating remotely with their employees. Look at our schools, where still we have a lot of students without technical devices. So this shows you that probably a country like Germany, we were not investing enough in digitalization because things were okay as they were. Another thing is the company I used to work for, they were running on-site events. And yeah, I have been trying, shame on me, I had no results with that, but I have been trying to convince them to start remote events, because I was like already then, like 5 years ago, people were hesitant to travel because of travel expenses. But now the companies say, well, our events are running that well, and it's so great to have all people in one place, and there are so many advantages. And look at them, what they needed to do when the pandemic hit. They lost revenue from events for a really long period, because they needed the time to then set up the online events. So that's to say, and there is this model here, the change house model, and you probably have seen that as change professionals. If you haven't, let me quickly run through this. So the one place that we're looking at right now is the so-called sun deck. That's where we're all sitting in the sun, enjoying our lives because things are as they are, and we're really happy with it. So this is the room of contentment and the sun deck, and we're going there and we're enjoying lives. And then only when things happen, the first thing that starts happening is that we're saying, oh no, this can't be true. I mean, what's happening out there? This is not real. And we deny it. We deny it. We can fall into the cellar of despair. We can go through a room of confusion where we start trying to figure out what this all means. And then at some point, we hopefully and probably go to the room of renewal, where we then pull everything together and we have the new situation. And then again, the new normal is the room of contentment. So this sun deck, what can we do there? I would say a mistake is really to go out and lay on the sun deck. So what can companies do? What can you do as a person? If you feel that, yeah, things are great, I don't have to change, there is no need to change, my recommendation to you is listen to the proactive people. There are two kinds of people, if you think about it. There are those who would rather wait for something to happen and then they react to it. So they're more the reactive kind. And then there are those who always look out for things that are new and always look out for things that excite them. I would call them the more proactive people. And you would want to have those around you. If you're a more reactive type of person, make sure that you befriend with a proactive one. And kind of try to listen to them a bit more of what they're seeing on the horizon. And always question the status quo, as it says here. So if you are in a good situation, always ask yourself, well, what else could I do? What else could I change? What else could I look out for? Is there anything new that I could learn? And make it even a habit. So I mean, there is in coaching, for example, we know that habits build up over a course of time. So the shortest period of time where you can build a new habit is 21 days. So if you're doing something on a regular basis for 21 days, there is a high chance that you will continue doing it. For some, it takes a bit longer, but 21 days is really good bet. And so change a habit. How can I do that? You can say, well, okay, every single day I want to do something new. I want to learn something new. Maybe I take a different road to work or sports or whatever. And so make that a habit. Always look for things to do it differently so that you don't end up on that sun deck, so that you're ready for change here. So that's the first thing really that happens in this first stage, in the pre-change stage, as I call it. The second mistake that I have seen there is to have no vision. Well, no vision has two aspects. The first is I don't have a vision. The second is I may have one, but I am not able to share it in the best possible way. So I also worked with a CXO lately, and she is into people management, and she had a guest talk at our university, and she emphasized that to her, having a vision and communicating the vision is probably the single most important thing that a leader can do and has to do in a company these days. Just because everyone is sitting in their home offices remotely, working on something that they need to know where it's going to. They need to know where this is linked to. So they should have a vision. It's a unifier. So have one, have a vision, develop a vision. There is this approach of Walt Disney the Walt Disney strategy approach that you could use to build a vision, an approach where it says, well, first of all, dream. Let the dreamer in you really come up with what could be, what would you have to have, what would you like to do, what would you dream of doing, and think about it, and let the realist and the critic not having their say. Let really the dreamer do the dreaming first, so that you can build this vision. And of course, in a company, you want to make sure that it's not only your own vision, but it's a vision that you can share, with the people that you're working in. So you want to have a vision, you want to build that, you want to make sure that everyone on the leadership team has the same understanding of that vision, that everyone is built up, has bought into it, and then that you start then communicate them. And this really is the tricky thing. So we will talk a lot about communication even later when we talk about the in the face of transformation stage, but also the vision. You want to communicate that. You want to communicate that on every single level, especially now in the situation where people are working remotely, because everyone needs to understand how can they contribute to the bigger dream of the company. So it needs to be clear, and it needs to be attractive. It needs to be attractive for everyone in the company to want to work towards that goal, because otherwise they will do business as needed, as usual. They would probably maybe even already start not detaching from the company. So you need to have them on board. You need them excited about what the company is about to do. And you also want them to know what happens if things will not happen. Because you have people who are drawn towards goals, and you have people who are pushed away from problems and pain. And you want to talk to both of them. You want to talk to both of that type of person. So make sure you have a vision. Make sure you communicate it up, around, and down in the organization. Change needs to start at the top, as we know, but everyone needs to understand it, where the company wants to go, and check whether people have understood. Because the one thing that I have seen happening most often, especially in leadership areas, in the leadership level, is that people make a lot of assumptions. And people assume that if they have talked about their vision, everyone understands their ideas behind. And no, that's not the case. Always assume that everyone else has no clue and no idea of what you're talking about, and make it crystal clear of what you're doing there.
Kristen, at this stage, what would be the impact of the level of trust on, keeping things in momentum for the change efforts? I mean, all this, sharing the vision and communicating, it all requires some level of trust, I believe.
Oh, definitely. Trust is probably the number one thing that you want to establish in a company. I can simply not imagine an environment where in a company, in an organization, there is no trust. I personally would never, ever want to work in that environment. And I think not a lot of people would. So trust, as you said, is definitely the prerequisite for any of that type of conversation. And I think communicating very openly builds that trust. Communicating very openly and then sticking to what had been said really starts creating that trust. So right. You might not know, I am not only specialized in this type of drawings behind me. Another area that I'm specializing in my coaching is trust technique. That actually is a methodology to build trust between people and animals, believe it or not. But the idea is exactly the same. We can only build trust by being really open and by listening. And we will talk more about how important listening is in change management initiatives later on.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. I love your questions. So, what else is a mistake that I have seen pretty common? It's metrics or the lack of metrics. And this already starts on a personal level. Like Gösta, you asked me, well, am I happy with what I'm doing right now? And I can only tell you if I have an idea of what makes me happy. So how can I measure my happiness? How can I make sure that I can compare my status right now to what I had before? And as I told you, one of the measures really is time. And to me, I am so much more rich in time right now. So this is one metric that I'm clearly improved on. Not talking about money that much, but time, yes, definitely. So and I want to make sure I know that I will know that it worked. And I need to set up those metrics right away at the beginning before I even start doing my change management initiatives. And I'm saying, well, I'm not talking about money because everyone talks about money. Money is the number one driver these days, and everyone is kind of having money in their mind. But money usually is a lagging metric. So I also want to have some intangible, non-financial metrics that I can use to understand whether I have achieved my goal. So I need to understand, I need to make up my mind of what is it that I want to achieve. So start with the end in mind. By the way, this is a chapter of a book, of the number one book that I've always recommending my students. It's called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So this is really my number one recommendation to everyone in a leadership and management position. And start with the end in mind is one of those chapters. And he's talking more from a personal perspective, which makes a lot of sense as well. Think about what you would want to have achieved at the end of your life. But the same is true in corporate, and the same is true for organizations. Think about at the beginning of a change management initiative, what would you want to have achieved when it's over? It's also about benefits realization. Not a lot of companies are actually tracking their benefits realization. So they have no idea once they have gone through the exercise whether it really all made sense. And so, yes, you need to have a way to identify the benefits and then to execute and then to measure the benefits. And you can only do that if you have a clear set of metrics and if you track them constantly. And so this is the one of the things, the third mistake that I have seen in private environments and also in professional environments from a career perspective and also from a larger organizational perspective. So definitely make sure you track the metrics, you set them up first and then track them going forward.
But question, Kristen, here, why does this become an issue? What is the real difficulty about setting metrics and measuring them? Because people usually not, I wouldn't say avoid, but find it a bit cumbersome or troublesome, or people don't believe the right metrics have been selected, or they don't know which metrics to pick. Is this is my observation. I may be wrong. Do you think, isn't this a very difficult part of everything? Any recommendations on how to overcome?
It's a very difficult part. It's I think not a lot of people even think about it. I think that's where it already starts. People don't put a lot of thought into, well, how can we actually measure it? I think once they start thinking about it, yes, it's not easy to find, but if you take an approach like the balanced scorecard and methodologies like that, you have a structure, you would have a framework that helps you doing it. I think it is really, everyone is excited about the new thing, and maybe they have one or two metrics, maybe they have some financial metrics, but they're not thinking about the non-financial and intangible metrics that much. And I think that's my recommendation. Just make sure you set them up, you clearly set them up, and make sure you track them constantly and you iterate. So if I track them and I find out that I'm going in the wrong direction, I can work on it. If I'm not setting up metrics, I'm not tracking them, I cannot avoid any mistakes that I'm making in the way of my change management initiative. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sure. Thank you. Please.
Great. And thanks for adding your aspect. So, okay. So this was about the initial part of change. So making sure that change is started and is started in a best possible way. Now let's look into the actual transformation. What happens at the transformation stage? So when things change, when things need to be communicated.
And a participant has raised a hand. I don't know. I'm just noticing it now. If it's too late, I apologize. But Nila, is there something that you'd like to? Oh, maybe not anymore. I thought someone raised a hand, but okay. Sorry for the interruption. Please.
Yeah, no worries at all. As I said, you need to interrupt me, and we can ask if there are any questions so far. Otherwise, I just go on, and we'll have the questions then later on.
Okay, I'm keeping an eye on the Q&A section.
Excellent, great. So the during stage, the one probably everyone is thinking a lot about when we talk about change management initiatives, and the one thing in there that I have seen most commonly is communication. And I think we all understand nowadays that communication is really important. It's important to communicate a lot. It's important to communicate very clearly, very openly. But what I have learned, and that is the part from NLP, what I have learned there, what I have realized there, first of all, is that people are not alike. Well, I probably knew that before, but there are certain ways in communicating that are really different. And me being a certain type of person, I have my little own understanding of my world. So I know how to convince myself. I know how to motivate me. I know how to get me excited. But there are other people out there, and they might think completely differently. And I wanted to give you a bit of an approach of how you can find that out. So several characteristics where people are really different in how they motivate themselves and how they are motivated. And of course, I need to take that into account for my communication. And now that's okay. So I could forward again. So the one thing that is true for communication and messages is definitely one size fits no one. So one thing already that makes a difference to people, it's subtle. But when you start listening for it, you will find that people are communicating in a different way because people are taking in the world in different ways. You will have people that talk a lot about what they have seen. So they have seen change coming up. They have perceived a really great difference they have observed things moving that way. What does this tell me? This tells me that this person is observing, is seeing the world mostly through their eyes. So when they communicate, they give me all their impressions from a visual perspective. You will have people that will communicate a lot and will tell you what they heard about, what they are. It sounds. They will say something like, "Oh yeah, that sounds right. Oh yeah, I have heard talk about that." Those are the people who are mainly observing the world or taking in their world through their ears. So auditive people. And then there are those that will tell you, yeah, that feels right. Feels good to me. Those are the more tactical, the more kinesthetic people. And those, as I said, are nuances. But even that, if you take that into account in your communication, you will reach them much better than if you would only use your own channel and your own way of interacting with the world. So that's a small thing. And then there are bigger things that really make a difference. Now let's look into these bigger things that you can have in mind when communicating with people. So let me give you an example. Let me give you an example. That's a difficult sentence to say. About two different ways of being motivated. And I'll give you the example of my husband and me going on holiday. So my husband, when he wants to go on a holiday, he usually suggests, oh yeah, we could go to Italy, Caorle, which is a place there, to the hotel that we have been through for the last 30 years, to hopefully they have the same hotel room for us that we used to have for the last, I don't know how many years. And yeah, I'm so looking for, because I will recognize everything and everything there is the same. And I'm just so at home there. So my husband really is a person who looks for stability, and he loves habit and he loves tradition. So he wants to do the things the same way again and again and again. And yeah, I think you now have guessed by now what type of person I am. I would love to go in a different place every single time, but who wins? Usually my husband. So, but it's the exact same thing in corporate. You will have people who want to have their habits, who love things being a routine, who love things being a tradition. Like, I would not want an accountant to come up with a new way of working every single day. I wouldn't. I would want to have same oriented people there. While in sales, I would probably have a person who wants to have a different approach every time. They want to learn, they want to have new experiences, they want to try different approaches. So, and in an organization where you lead the change management initiatives, you will have both. So you will need to have that in mind and communicate in both directions. Like, if my husband and I would go buy a car, and we would have a really smart salesperson there, the salesperson would talk to my husband in that way. He would tell him that the new car that we're looking at, it's a different model, but at the end of the day, it's really the same chassis, it's the same experience of driving. If you get there, you will recognize the kind of setting there. You will feel at home because you probably will select the same color. And so the form, the shape of the car has only slightly changed. It's almost the same. Same person talking to me probably will tell me that, wow, you will be surprised because the technology has completely changed. So you have an experience like you were sitting in a completely different car. Yeah, you probably have the same color, but you see that the nuance of that color is completely different. So it was a bit shiny in the past, and now it's completely matte, and this is so much cooler. And yeah, you will feel like in a completely different car. So it's the same product, but just wrapped in a different paper. And this is what you want to do in your message when you want to communicate to people who have a same approach versus a different approach. You want to highlight things that stay the same so that they can feel safe and comfortable for the same people. And you want to highlight all the great changes and the different things for those who are looking for different. So this is really something that I have seen happening quite a lot. You will not be able to motivate a same person with the big new thing, and you will not motivate a different person with going to the same place twice. So that's one area there. The other thing is your style, and where are my things go here? So there are different, also from a personality perspective. There are different people. There are those who are more focusing on tasks versus people. There are those focusing more on asking versus telling. There is one thing I am really careful about, because I feel these personality tests, a lot of what they do is they serve as an excuse for very strong characters. And so I am not so much like a proponent of these personality tests, because I think more than underlining the fact that all people are different and all people are equal, and they need to and we need to find a way to communicating with them. Sometimes these personality tests are taken as a way to to kind of highlight that maybe a driver is better in a leadership role than an amiable person or whatever. So this is why I'm a bit hesitant there, but definitely you wanna make sure that your communication is so that you reach everyone. So if you want to talk to a person that is task and ask oriented, so an analytical person, you want to have a lot of data and facts in your communication. For the driver, you want to have facts as well. For an expressive person, you probably need a lot of stories and emotions. The same for the amiable person one. You need to deliver the facts, but put them into a story, add some emotions to that. So that's why I use these personality test results to craft communication that really aligns with it, much more than just using it to position people.
Kristen,
Okay.
there's a question. How can we understand that our corporate team is from the same group or from the different group? You know.
Okay, so
possible.
Yeah, interesting question. So one thing that is I'm just clicking this is done because I will answer. So one thing that you can do is, if we're talking about people here, so if you have a certain personality in mind, a certain person in mind, you can talk about with them. First of all, you can ask about their holidays. Where have you spent your last vacation? Oh, it's the first time you went there. Oh, it's the 10th time you went there. That already will give you an indication. Next thing is talk about how often they have changed their jobs. You can also look at what they like doing. Do they like repetitive tasks rather than having a different approach every day? I would expect happy accountants to be more of the same personality type. By the way, I would also expect surgeons and pilots to be same personality types, because I don't want them to be really creative about what they're doing. I would expect a person working in research and development being more of a different type. So being the one on the lookout for innovations, for new things to do. So that's a way of actually talk to the people, have this in mind, have the knowledge in mind, and look for indicators of how these people are motivated.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then there is this question about the personality test. So there is one that is probably the most familiar one, and that's the 16 different Myers-Briggs personality types. And there is a free website that is called 16 personalities. And this, to me, it's a free test, and you just can take it, and it has some value in it so that you can understand. I think the personality tests, what I usually take them for, is to better understand myself, and then to get curious into how different other people can be different. Because this, when I started learning about this, I was like, ooh, I always thought that, yes, I'm different, but not that much. So this really is, I think, the most important thing for those personality tests, is really have an open mind to identify how different other people can be. I think that's the one thing how I would now use them currently. Because again, I have seen, especially when I'm talking to very strong personalities in my coachings, quite a few of them use the results from their personality tests to kind of excuse bad things they're doing, to be honest. And so that's the fact about personality tests that I'm I don't like that much. Okay, so what else do we have here? Next one is another way how people are different, and that is the way I focus on things. There are people that need a lot of detail, and they love detail. And again, I'm taking my accountants here. I would want an accountant to love detail. I would want them to really look for that 1 cent that is missing. A detail-oriented person, when they start talking about their holidays, they probably start from the minute they have made the decision. They will tell you everything about the preparation and how the travel went, and then they went on site, and they will give you all the nitty-gritty details of what happened. On the other hand, you have globally oriented people. They want to have an overview. They get mad if you start talking to them about the details. They are like, okay, can we get to the main points here? So that's another extreme, of course. By the way, I had like a month ago, 2 months ago, I had a coaching situation where I had a coachee, a client of mine, and his manager was completely globally oriented, and the coachee was completely detail oriented. And oh my God, they had a hard time working with each other. So it's important that you recognize that there are these two extremes. And then it's important to know that if you want to communicate and get both on board, you communicate for them. So for example, you could do a summary, an executive summary at the beginning, and then you go into all the little details. So you can cater towards the globally oriented and towards the detail-oriented person. So absolutely something that is needed, because as I said, you will drive a globally oriented person nuts if you tell them all the details, and you will leave the detail-oriented person really insecure if you don't give them the details that they need. Okay. So,
Kristen, there is a volunteer who would like to join your coaching programs, but we can discuss it later.
Yeah, you're always welcome. You're always welcome. I love my coaching, and I love my I'm as I said, I'm doing coaching built coupled with counseling, I think, because I always have these odd ideas that I share there as well. So yeah, thank you. Sure. Just I'll give you my details at the end. So I'm more than happy for you. Yeah. Okay.
Great.
So last one on this communication part, really, and I think I already alluded to it. I talked to it about when we talked about the away from, and so the big pain and the dream, when we talked about the vision. And this is also important in communication. You will have people that will only move if the house is burning. So they will wait until they cannot bear it anymore, and then they will start moving. So if you communicate to them, you will want them to really understand that there is a need to move, because otherwise things would go really bad. So these are what we call, or the NLP meta programs call them, away from. So they move away from big pain. And then you have people who move towards a big dream. They have this dream and they want to get there. And again, you could ask me, how can you find that out? That's really, really, really easy. Ask them why they have changed their job. Why they have changed their job. If they haven't, they probably are an away from person, because they just deal with whatever comes up so that they don't have to change. If they have changed, they will tell you, well, this last job, it was so horrible. I could not stand it anymore. My manager drove me nuts. I couldn't be there one more day. Or you have the other one that says, well, actually, I have this dream. I want to make $1 million a year. And I have this great opportunity in this organization. The last one was fantastic, but I couldn't get there. So it was difficult for me to get promoted. So I had this opportunity here, and I definitely needed to seize it. So these are the people working towards the dream. So by the way, if you are working in the sales department, you would want to have towards people, especially for the new accounts. You would want to have some away from people for the existing accounts, because you would want to have people who really made sure that customers would not leave, and they would do everything to keep them. So this is how you could use that knowledge also as a manager. But of course, in the change management initiative, you want to communicate for both. Talk about what can happen and the great things that will happen, and also talk about what happens if there is no change. So this really is something else that makes a big difference in communication. And again, I can give you, for every of these things, I can give you multiple examples from my coaching situations where I had a manager who was completely towards person, and he had a person working from him from what he has told me was completely away from, and to incentivize him, to motivate him, he put them on an innovation product, on an innovation initiative. Well, probably not the best match, and probably not the best outcome. So that's the other thing. Know the people that you're working with. Know what motivates them, because then you can definitely get much more out of them. And not because you're kind of pressuring them, but because you offer them the platform that they need. Now, looking at my watch, we're almost up to 1 hour, and I think this had been set up for an hour. So are we okay to continue, or should I wrap up here? Let me ask those then.
I think we can continue, and those who don't have time will leave. It's understandable, but if you have time,
yeah.
Now I'm receiving messages. Please continue. So I think we have many who would like to keep listening.
Okay, wonderful. And the next ones I'm probably not that passionate about, so I will not talk that much about, but of course I will cover them, because the other thing that happens in this in-between phase is obstacles. And I think that's one big mistake that people can make as well. So communication is probably the biggest, I would say. But then ignore obstacles. So literally look at things that are in the way for the change. And interestingly enough, a lot of the times, the lower levels in the organization will probably identify those obstacles before the leadership does, because they know how things work. They have the day-to-day experience. So this is really something that managers, leaders need to listen to the concerns and act on it. Or if you don't act on it, at least let the people know why you are not acting on it. Another conversation I had with one of my coachees who was complaining about leadership, asking for his opinion, and then doing something completely else, making a different decision, and never letting him know about it. And he was like, this is the worst thing that can happen. And by the way, I have an employee, and he is so not involved, so not motivated, and I have no idea what happened. I have asked him about his opinion. He gave me his opinion. I had to make a different decision, but hey, I listened to him, and I'm like, have you told him why you have not put his recommendation in place? And he goes, no, I haven't. And I'm like, do you see any parallels between the two situations? And he said, yeah. So this is how easy that happens. We understand very, very quickly whether we have been listened to. So we need to make sure that we listen also to others. And if we are not acting upon their opinion, which can be, of course, the case, because we probably have more information than they have, but we need to let them understand why, so that people feel listened to. And that adds to your earlier point, Rasta, about the trust. This builds trust. If I am listened to and I am getting feedback, or maybe even the actions are put based on what I have shared, this really builds a great level of trust there. So not listening definitely doesn't help there.
Certainly.
And then we're going back to the measurements. I think I talked already about it at length when we talked about the metrics. So it's the same here. Track the metrics, analyze, iterate, make sure you act on them. By the way, this is where I can see a very, very close link to these new methodologies, to this new framework of agility, agile approaches like Scrum. So I have gone through all my Scrum material today, again, for different reasons, but this is exactly where Scrum helps that much, because with Scrum, with this framework for agile approach it started in software product development, but now a lot of companies are using the Scrum agile approach for all types of projects, all types of development in the organization. And in the Scrum approach, you have a built-in review and retrospective. So every time the development team has worked on a specific task, they will go back to the stakeholders and will share the results with them and will discuss the validity, the value of what they have produced, so that they can, in the next iteration, make sure that they implement all the feedback that they're getting. And in the retrospective, they would talk about how they actually worked on the stuff and made changes and improvements to that. So a review of what have been produced and a review of how it has been produced. And I think those two elements, they are so crucial. Even if your company is not going in an agile approach, these are two elements that I would definitely always add to any change management initiative, because this is the only way we can learn from it. Make sure that we look at what happened and look back at how we produced it, and use that knowledge for the next approach. So what else can happen is give up and go back. And in the company, the two of us have worked on that. This has happened quite a few times, where we implemented new things, we implemented new products, and nobody really adapted them. And so at the end of the day, they were discontinued. Why does this happen? I think it's because to change, we need to move out of our comfort zones. You all know that by now. And it's so easy to say, and it's so hard to do. So what helps us move out of the comfort zone? First of all, we talked about forming habits. So I need to establish a new normal. And that is, I need to do the same thing for 21 up to 60 days. So some psychologists say it's 60 days to form a new habit, and some start at 21 days. And then that prevents you to go back into the comfort zone, because once you have gone out of it, is no guarantee that you will stay out of it. There is always this tendency, or the kind of, the kind of need or the want to go back to this comfy little nice zone that we have there. So what can companies do? What can you do? What can leaders do? First of all, it's go first. So for example, I used to work in the product department. Whenever we came up with a new product name, sometimes products are renamed. I made sure that from that time on, I would always use the new name. But you would be surprised at how alone I was in that approach. And maybe it's just because I'm so excited about new things and others aren't. But if a leader is once or twice using an old name, it's an excuse for everyone else to fall back to the old names. So this will not help establish a habit. And this is true not only for names, this is true for any new rule you want to establish. As a leader, you need to make sure that you go first. You need to make sure that you establish what you want to put in place. And you want to keep communicating. So making sure that this new normal is the new normal, there is no way back. So people might not be at your stage here. They might try to fall back, and you are not allowing them by just communicating the new things again and again. And you want to make old habits difficult. That's, by the way, again, in my work with animals, that's the one way to train animals. Make what you want to have easy and what you don't want to have harder. And the same is true for people. Make it just easy to live in the new way and make it harder to do it the old way. Like with I don't know, when in earlier days, you would probably have sent a document to someone, and now you're sending a link because you want the people to go through the website to access it, because you can then track it. So you want to make sure that you make it much more difficult to send a document than sending the link. So make it very, very easy to send the link. And this is what companies need to do. And also celebrate wins. So whenever there is something going right, whenever the first win for a new product has come in, whenever the newly integrated organization has has created some synergies, celebrate that. Let people know that they should be happy. They should be if they are not on the right way. And do it in the way that we talked about before, to get everyone on board, the one who is away from, the one who is towards, the one who wants to stick with same, the other one who wants to see different things. So make sure you take that into account. And then we're going back full circle. We started off with complacency, and we're ending up with complacency, because think what? The new way can also seem like the way it is now. We're there. Wow, it's great. Wow, what an effort we have taken. So we're back to the sun top. The new is the new normal. The new is my new comfort zone. So again, the question is, how can we prevent people from getting onto the sunroof, onto the sun top? how can we make sure that they stay looking for new things? And I kind of created this little this little visual here is shut down the sun deck. Make sure that you motivate them to climb up the roof and look out for new things. And of course, it's easier when you have people who are really proactive, you have people who are looking for the different things in life. So make sure that you put those in positions where they can look for change, where they can then initiate change. At the beginning, you don't have to have everyone on the roof, but you need a few people. You need a few people that you can then count on, so that ignite the fire for new change, so that this is their place to rest. So they look out, they stay there on the roof, they get the sun as well, but they look out for the new things happening out there, for the new ideas, for the new stars that they want to work towards.
Kristen, I would like to maybe leave the last 5 minutes. Not we're already over time, but if you just consider finishing at 8:45, we may have 5 minutes for Q&A, and please feel free to stand in questions. But since we're already over time, we may as well finish. But I know that you have all listened very interested in a very interested way, and I can sense the pleasure. I share it with the audience. These are very relevant issues, and of course, change is inevitable. We've all seen that. We all witnessed that. I think it's just a matter of how to approach the change and how to maybe in a professional sense, it's managing change, but also how to, I would say in a personal life, enjoy change, because maybe for the Gen Z, we have this FOMO, fear of missing out. Now I see status quo as a fear of missing out, because good things happen, a lot of interesting things happen. But if you stay in your comfort zone, you're missing out. I mean, it's as simple as that. And so this should be some encouragement to those who want to stay the same, who are concerned about change. So thank you very much. It's been a very, very nice presentation and very to the point sharing. And now a question has arrived about Neurografica. Can you please mention that a little, Kristen? Because this question, I'm sorry, I forgot about that, but are there lessons or practices to experience in Neurografica is the question.
So yes, absolutely. That's why I'm so excited about this method. So it's a creative transformation method. It's visual. The interesting thing there, just in like 2 sentences, is that we create credible change because we are modifying things on paper. Our eyes see it, our mind believes it, because it sees that it's already there. So whatever we want to change, whatever we want to modify in our lives, we can put it on paper, work on it, and the reality is already there. And the interesting thing is the reality in the world actually also changes quite a bit when we start drawing about it. So it's a fantastic methodology for individuals, for teams, for personal change, professional change. And on my last slide, I have my website details. So I have a section on Neurografica there as well, and then I have a YouTube channel talking about Neurografica. So because we're short on time now, there is a lot that you can find there, and then you know where to find me.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for joining, and we'll see you all in our next session, and have a good evening, everyone. Thank you, Kristen, once again for your contribution.
Thank you, Guste. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you.